All right, so I want to say hi and thanks for tuning in to our first webinar with disabledveterans.org. I appreciate it a ton that you guys took the time to show up and participate here. Before I really dive into the meat and potatoes of the respective webinar, I wanted to show you this picture that I'd taken when I was in Philly last week for the NOVA conference to give you a little bit of context. We had just finished talking about Agent Orange and problems with the government failing to admit to the diseases that it causes. And that's when I stumbled across this particular view of old Philly. So if you can see on the screen here, you're going to have Dow Chemicals here on the right-hand side, and over here we have Independence Hall. Here we have, in this lower corner, on the left-hand side, we have the Second Bank of the United States. That's what Andrew Jackson had shut down in the 1830s, I believe. And then we have the First Amendment Memorial here at the bottom, all in one particular screen. And the reason that this struck me is that we have a situation currently where veterans by the thousands are dying from different exposures to chemicals from experiments conducted by Dow and some of the other companies like Monsanto and whatnot with respect to Agent Orange. And those veterans can't talk about their exposure due to national security gags. So meanwhile, the government screws these same veterans, the same kind of people who fought so that we could even have a First Amendment in the first place when they try to get access to their disability benefits. So the same government denies these same men and women from their First Amendment rights. I was struck by how we still struggle today with the same, what appears to be an all too cozy relationship between corruption and the government that we fought so hard against over 200 years ago. So this webinar is going to be broken down into three parts. First, I'll talk about what we're going to be doing in D.C. So I'm going to be jumping back and forth here a little bit so you can follow along with the PDF here, the PowerPoint that I put together. So basically, again, the webinar is going to be broken down into three parts. First, we'll talk about what we're doing in D.C. with various veterans issues. And when I say we, it's not exactly the royal we, but myself, Veterans for Common Sense, and some other veterans who've been able to take a little bit of time out of their schedule to help. So second, we'll talk about me, like who the hell is this Ben Krause guy, so that you guys at least understand who I am and what my background is. And then third, we'll talk about last week's Veterans Law Conference in Philadelphia and to provide a little bit of context for your particular questions. So some of the references will be included in the slides, and like I had said to, I can't remember who it was before, I'm going to be able to send out the PDF. I'll send out some relevant things that you guys can use for references and everything else. So don't worry as much about writing down while we talk. Just try to focus on what I'm saying and the actual PDF or the PowerPoint in front of you, and we'll just go from there. So here's basically what's going on the advocacy front. So since January, I convinced Voc Rehab to now start paying for health insurance when it's required by a college or university for a disabled veteran in the program. With Veterans for Common Sense, I had a chance to talk with the Democratic National Platform Committee about what veterans are going to need moving forward. And VCS, I don't know if any of you guys know, but VCS just leveled a class action lawsuit against the VA at the Supreme Court to try to make sure that the VA changes its policies to provide care for people with PTSD and TBI in a timely manner. So aside from this, here's a list of things I'm working on here in Minnesota and in DC to some degree, and I could obviously use a ton of help, and I'll get into the help part later. But basically, we're looking at education benefits on the left-hand side, low GI Bill usage, Voc Rehab problems. I'll get into those in a second. We also have problems with respect to fraud within the VA. Nobody is probably too terribly surprised to hear that, but we have contractor fraud, VA employee fraud, bad disability decisions, etc. And we're looking at different ways to solve those problems using the law. So moving forward, I wanted to tell you a little bit about my good old buddy Tom Murphy here. This guy is actually in charge of disability compensation with the VA, and like the slide says, friends in low places, and I sure wish I had whiskey when I was in this picture. But here on the right-hand side is me when Tom was tap dancing around what Congress was trying to ask him. And then on the left-hand side, I'd met him, what day was that? It would have been Thursday. I was able to get him to take a picture with me after I called him Twinkle Toes Murphy, so that was kind of funny. But anyway, nonetheless, so Tom and I talked, and he told me that one of the companies that we're looking into with respect to fraud in the VA did not have their contract renewed, despite that was part of the contract. And so it looks like there may be some issues, and should something actually surface that's illegal, we may be able to bring a coup-tom lawsuit after I'm done with law school. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. And basically, a coup-tom lawsuit is a lawsuit where you sue a government contractor that defrauded the government on behalf of the government. What ends up happening then is you're able to recoup whatever money was essentially stolen from the government and give that back to the VA. So that's what's going on there. Now, with respect to this next slide, there's the GI Bill. And I'm sure a lot of you probably didn't realize that only 3% of veterans using the GI Bill are actually graduating from college. So it seems very surprising. Here I am talking with Congressman Walz about the issue. In the lower left-hand corner, I actually was able to get the local Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs to let me in with my own scanner and computer so I could scan files. So in the center here, there was about a stack of 18 to 20 inches worth of material that the VA, at least locally here in Minnesota, refused to scan for God knows whatever reason. So I offered to use my own scanner and drive over there to scan the documents. And within the documents, we'll be able to learn whether or not different colleges are defrauding veterans, whether, there's all kinds of different issues that we can find, and hopefully we'll be able to sort it out. Now, I talked with the VA Assistant Secretary, Dr. Tommy Thars, who was recently brought in, I want to say maybe a month ago. He was unaware of the numbers and actually gave me a bit of a hard time about the 3% graduating. Meanwhile, the big irony is that the VA has never tracked the data, so they don't know how many veterans are using the GI Bill, and they don't know how many veterans, or they know how many are using GI Bill, not necessarily how many are graduating from college. So I thought it was interesting that we have billions of dollars going into this program, and meanwhile, the Department of Veterans Affairs doesn't seem to know what exactly is going on with that particular program. So now the next part of the presentation is me, basically, who the fuck is Ben Krause? So given that this is the first webinar that I've done with you or anyone else, I wanted to take some time to introduce myself and talk a little bit about me, the site, and what we're trying to do so that you can know whether or not you want to jump in and help out or what you want to do. So I want to do this with the goal of basically pointing out that I'm no brainiac. Anybody can help. Anyone can do exactly what I've done. I just bust my ass and I don't take shit from the VA, which I hope none of you do either. And so if I can do it, you definitely can. And in fact, I need your help, as I've been saying, because I'm tired of doing it alone, or I need some folks to kind of jump in here and help write and research and try to figure out what these goofballs are doing in D.C. So to my specific background, who I was before the military, I was a country hick from the woods of northern Wisconsin, graduated from a town of 370 people, graduating class of 40. I barely graduated high school, and before the military, I was homeless. So during the military, I was in the U.S. Air Force as a radar and radio guy. I worked in the Air Mobility Command and then the Air Force Special Operations Command after that point. My last duty station was RAF Mildenhall, and that's where I was with AFSOC. And when I got out of the military, or just absolutely clueless, I'm not even sure how to express how clueless I was about veterans benefits. And from that time until now, I basically kicked life into high gear and trying to kick ass and take names. So after the military, so during the past 10 years, graduated from Northwestern University, where I studied economics, creative writing. Then advocacy kicked in, figured out that the VA had been lying to me about my benefits, which is probably not a huge surprise to any of you at all, sadly. So after graduating from college in 2007, I realized that as far back as 2003, Voc Rehab had told me that, yeah? Hello? Oh, hello? Can you push mute, please? Hello? Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries. I heard somebody talking. Anyway, I'll keep going. So back in 2003, Voc Rehab told me they wouldn't pay for law school. Disability compensation said at the time that I was only 10% disabled, which had some nervous problems and breathing issues. So now, currently, fast forward 10 years, Voc Rehab is paying for me to finish law school at the University of Minnesota, and I'm now rated at 100%. So I literally basically used the system to educate me in legal matters so that I could win my own disability claim, and now I'm turning that education back at the VA to help all of you get what you're basically entitled to. So let me real quick push. It sounds like somebody is on the thing here.
You are now muted.
Okay. Can you guys still hear me? Can somebody push on the chat real quick and let me know? Yep. Okay. Thanks, Joseph. So it probably shouldn't be any surprise that I, because of my background, I actually hate lawyers, which is surprising because I'm in law school. But basically, none of them would take my own disability claim. So meanwhile, this last summer, I was able to win a large amount for back pay going all the way back to 2001. So this amazed most lawyers that I had met in Philadelphia, but it really shouldn't. And this actually surprised me that they were surprised. So here I was, a U.S. service member, and should have no problem taking the bull by the horns. And I was a little surprised that a couple of attorneys who were previously too lazy to take my own claim as veteran advocates didn't seem to want to help out in any way, so whatever. But I used that money to fund web development over the summer with disabledveterans.org and trips to D.C. I used a lot of the money from VA decision this summer to pay for software developers to build the new website, the Voc Rehab kit, and the online Veterans Resource Center. So the website's great, and I think a lot of you have probably been helped by it. It was designed to empower veterans like you to research their own claims, your own claims, and to provide insight into problems within the VA. So my hope is to start cracking the riddle of the VA and to start developing a case against bad actors, like I had said, who are defrauding us. So like I had said, I really could use some help within these types of areas. So once law school is over, I'll be going after those same dicks that seem to keep screwing us over and over again. And this is where, like I said, I could really use some help from you guys to help me research and write. It would be awesome, so that I can continue to allow you to tune into these kinds of webinars and to help you support what you're doing. So we're working hard to give you awesome tools like the Voc Rehab Survival Guide and get you your benefits, and now we're hoping to sue the government so that they will actually be honest with you for once. So while no one else seems to be getting a lot of shit done, I've had it, and I'm ready to try to fix the system. So moving ahead, I wanted to thank Brian for this, because he sent me an email for the Q&A part that said fuck the VA. I thought it was funny, so I wanted to include that. So so basically here we got now to the nuts and bolts here with respect to the presentation. As I alluded to, I just went to Philadelphia to the NOVA conference. NOVA is short for National Organization for Veterans Advocates. They do, let's see here, they do a really good job on Capitol Hill lobbying on behalf of veterans. They also fight with the VA on a regular basis to make sure that veterans get a fair shake. Now, I wanted to take a second to talk a little bit about the debate between lawyers and veteran service officers with respect to veterans law. Now, traditionally, veteran service organizations like the VFW and DAV hate lawyers working in veterans law because it takes away from their authority in the system. I mean, ultimately, I think that's what the issue is. However, for years, these same veteran service organizations have been largely complicit in letting veterans get totally screwed by the system, and it still happens on a regular basis today. So in my own experience, I have worked with tons of VSOs over the years, some good, some not so good. But there's really no accountability if a VSO screws up and fails to file your appeal on time. Meanwhile, take an attorney, that attorney can get sued for malpractice. So there is at least some form of accountability. In addition, veterans law attorneys are usually seasoned attorneys, while VSOs can look up and read the law in basic applications. And, again, that's very important, very important, but it's not the whole picture. They're unable to usually develop a veteran's claim through using independent medical examiners and expert writing techniques that will in turn help you fight against VA decisions that cause your denial. So that may not seem like a big difference, but it is. So in my own situation, one of the first VSOs I used